I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, we head out to Hagley Museum and Library to find out about all the cool things they have in store for us this spring, starting with Hagley Alfresco, and of course there is the always popular historic home and garden tour. All that coming up. The 302 is headed your way. We are at the ancestral home of the DuPont family at Hagley Museum and Library, and it's a really gorgeous place that you can come and check out, not just inside, but also outside in the gardens as well. And I'm joined by staff guide Bob Leitch to tell me all about some of the history of this room and the house as a whole. Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back to Hagley, Jackie. We're delighted to have you with us to visit with us here at Eleutherian Mills.
So tell us a little bit about the history behind this home. We know this was the first home of the DuPont family when they came to Delaware, but tell us a little bit more about the generations that lived here.
Sure. This house was home to 5 generations of the DuPont family, beginning in 1802 when its first occupant and owner of the DuPont company, Eleuthère Irénée DuPont, chose to settle in this area, the Brandywine Valley, build his family home, the barn to support the family farm, and all the mill buildings he would need down along the Brandywine to make black powder. So in the summer of 1803, he and his lovely wife Sophie moved into their new home with their 3 children born to them in France. While they lived here, they had 4 more children. So during the course of their tenure here, EI began his company called EI DuPont de Nemours and Company, a black powder manufactory. And over the years, his reputation for making high quality black powder grew. Subsequent generations have lived here, like his son Henry. When EI passed away in 1834, Alfred, his older brother, took over head of company, but was already living in his home a little further down the way here on the property that was originally known as Nemours. He had no use for the house. He gave it to his brother Henry, who had recently married his lovely bride Louisa Gerhardt DuPont. So the 2 of them moved into the home, and while they lived here for quite a while, they had 9 children, okay?
That's a lot.
4th generation DuPont. Unfortunately, their daughter, who was the second to last to be born, we don't know too much about little Mary Constance because sadly she died as an infant, okay? So notable among their children was Henry Algernon, and he was their firstborn and first son. After a period of time, he eventually acquired the property owned by his aunt Evelina. When she married Antoine Vitterman, they lived here for a time as newlyweds. They eventually decided to move away on their own and acquired the property just north of here that we know today as the Winterthur Museum, Garden and Library. So Henry Algernon and his wife, Mary Foster, raised 2 children there, Louise Evelina DuPont and her brother Henry Francis. In 1900, Louise married Frank Crowninshield, and they maintained his home in Salem, Massachusetts, where he came from, and together acquired a home on the island of Boca Grande off the Gulf Coast of Florida. Well, for the first 20 years of their life, they spent their time traveling up and down the eastern seaboard doing works of philanthropy and historic preservation. They were very dear to Louise. So by 1921, the DuPont company decided they no longer wanted to operate the powder yards here at Hagley. So they put the property up for sale after they shut down the mills. They were hoping a family member might buy it and keep it in the family. Along comes Henry Algernon. He's living at Winterthur, okay? He decides to acquire the property and give it to his daughter Louise as a gift. And he approaches her one day and says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you this house and this property as a gift if you promise me 2 things. First, I'd like you and Frank to stop by here once in a while, visit your mother and I on your travels up and down the eastern seaboard. Seemed like a reasonable request from any dad. So she said, sure, we'll stop during the months of May and October and stay for the month. Secondly, he says, I want you to join me in restoring the house, which had been left to years of neglect and abuse since Louisa abandoned it in 1890, and restore it. Make it your home, but do so in a way that reflects on our ancestry going all the way back to the time of EI. And that's what she agreed to do. So she spent several years refurbishing the house decorating in her style of colonial revival that she was very fond of, inspired by things that came from colonial Williamsburg, and made it their home for just 2 months of the year. Okay? So this is the home that we are able to show our visitors when they come to see Hagley Museum.
So Louisa, who restored a lot of this, was the great granddaughter of E.I. DuPont?
Yes. Louise Crowninshield was the 5th generation DuPont and last member of the family to live in this house during part of her lifetime.
It really is a beautiful home.
It certainly
and I
is.
wanted to ask you about the room we're in now. Tell me a little bit about, this is where, when you would come here, this is the first place as a guest for the historic garden and home tour. This is the first place you're going to be, right?
Yes. Once we come in the front door, we come in through the front hall and we come into what is known as the morning room. This was a reception space that the family used going all the way back to the original occupants of the house, E.I. and Sophie, to receive their guests for the day or for several days to visit. Louise Crowninshield and Frank did the same thing. They would be upstairs in the morning, getting ready for the day, and come down once their staff had placed the first fire of the day in this hearth, and then they would wait for their guests to arrive through the same front door that you entered when you arrived here, okay? And they would have maybe a cup of tea from her strawberry tea service while they were waiting, do some work at the writing desk behind us against the outside wall, and just relax until it was time to receive their guests. Because while they were here for the months of May and October, Louise enjoyed entertaining. She loved to have the house filled with guests all the time.
And dogs?
She had her entourage of dogs. They traveled with her everywhere they went, including her pet parrot, okay? Yes, very special.
So we had standard poodles and Pekingese, it seemed like.
Yes, she had large and small scale dogs, okay?
And all of the things that we see when we come for the home tour, most of them were collected by her or restored by her or had some connection to her, is that right? Or to the family?
These are all objects that she acquired during her lifetime based on her interest. For instance, the hook rugs that are on this floor, she acquired from the mills of New England and the maritime provinces of Canada. The chalkware that's on the highboy blanket chest behind us is the collectible that attracted her attention. Chalkware is simply plaster of Paris formed in a shape, painted only on the face that you see. And it's not fired, therefore it's not considered porcelain. But there are several pieces of this throughout the house that just drew her interest as a collectible, okay? The watercolors that are on the walls in this room were special to Frank. He collected these because he was interested in the American Railroad. And all these watercolors show you different versions of the Iron Horse, the steam engines that drew the railroads across the West as America grew.
They're really fascinating. When you look at the room, it's just so beautiful, and the dried flowers are reminiscent of the fact that Louisa loved fresh flowers throughout the home.
Oh, she certainly did. She actually built the greenhouses over by our bus stop to support that effort, because while they were here in residence, those 2 months of the year, she wanted fresh flowers in her home. Okay, she enjoyed that very much.
So we're going to learn a lot more about the historic home and garden tour when we return.
Hi, I'm Nick Sarator, the Exhibitions Director for the Rehoboth Art League, and I enjoy the creativity on 302.
Welcome back. We are now in the Terrace room, and Bob, this is a really cool room where I guess people would come and they would eat. Is that right?
That's correct. This is my favorite room in the house. It's a room located on the lower level of the north wing that was added to the house when Henry repaired the house because of all the damage that had accrued over the years because of explosions in the powder yards. And he added this north wing. Louise decorated this room to be her informal room where she served lunch to her guests. It was very casual, very informal, but tastefully decorated in a way that reflected her interest in colonial revival and colonial antiquities. There are more representations here of her chalkware collection in the bookcase to our left and on top of the china cabinet in the back of the room. She served lunch on her favorite green-rimmed porcelain china, along with her brightly colored green ribboned napkins that she dearly loved. She would serve lunch on some of her pewter, which is on the bookcase over there to the far right. The hearth beside us was restored to look like a colonial hearth, along with authentic ironware, brass and bronze that were used to prepare meals back in colonial times. And also in the back corner of this room are tubes and racks that are called taper molds. That's what folks would use to make their own candles when that was their only source of illumination in their homes. So it's interesting to note that as we go through the house, the candles that are here are electrified versions of tapers, but produce the same output that you would have received from a candle back in those days. So it's very genuine and very authentic to the space.
Now, while we've been in 2 rooms, there are many beautiful rooms for people to check out when they come for the historic home and garden tour. And this room in particular leads right out to one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, garden that you have on the property. Is that right?
That's correct. When you step outside of this room, because remember in season, the Crown and Shields were here during the months of May and October. So during lunch, if the weather allowed, Louise would open up the doors and windows and let outside come inside. And then they would finish lunch and go out onto the terrace just outside these doors and enjoy their visit for the rest of the afternoon. It was also the way that guests could go with them down and enjoy their lovely Italian ruins Renaissance garden on the hillside behind the residence. And it extended all the way down the hillside to the edge of the Brandywine Creek back in the day.
Now, I know that there are several levels to the terrace garden, and there are pillars, and back in the day there were statuary. And there's an effort going on right now to kind of bring it back to its original glory. Can you tell me about that?
Well, the garden right now is in a state of ruin, hence the name Italian Ruins Renaissance Garden. Since the Crown and Shields passed, no work has really been done on the garden, and the museum has decided to put in the effort, the resources, and the time to restore it to its former grandeur when the Crown and Shields finished it in 1928. After that point in time, the garden was constantly in a state of change. They were never satisfied, they were never finished. They were constantly moving things, adding things, changing things. And that was something that they enjoyed doing very much, okay? They were connected to nature. All the flowers and fauna and trees that were planted were personally selected by Frank and Louise, okay? So we are in the process of making that happen again and making it come alive.
And that wouldn't be the first time that a garden on this property was brought back to life. There is a garden around the front of the house, right?
That's right.
You had to have an archaeological dig. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. After Louise passed and the museum decided to try to open up the grounds and the buildings to our visitors, they found that after Louisa Gerhardt DuPont abandoned the house in 1890 for good and never came back, no one was here that really could use the benefit of a kitchen garden. It's a French parterre garden design that EI brought with them from France when they emigrated here in 1799. It's a very traditional parterre garden. Parterre simply means that the land is broken down into squares of equal size, and within each square, EI planted alternating rows of flowers and vegetables. And it was fortunate that his background was in botany. He was not a powderman when he arrived here. He had a time to enjoy an apprenticeship in France thanks to his father's connection in government with Antoine Lavoisier, who was recognized at that time as the preeminent authority in the manufacture and production of black powder. So EI tried it, told his father that wasn't for him, and he went back to school and learned botany. So that served him well when they arrived here in the summer of 1803. He realized he needed to have a way to feed his family. So he planted this French parterre garden in the front of the house. It occupied some 2 acres of land and was very productive, okay? So we did not know where the garden lay when we acquired the property from the company. So they commissioned an archaeological dig around 1970 to find any markers under the soil that would give them some clue as to where the garden lay. They found them and were able to restore that land to reflect EI's original design. We are fortunate to have in our archives all of his personal papers, his sketches, his plant lists, his seed lists, his letters of exchange with other farmers in the area, because they would do that all the time to support each other. So our horticultural staff has made that garden as historically accurate and authentic to EI's time as we possibly can. It's a living, breathing garden 12 months a year, and all of the vegetables and fruits that are harvested in season are collected and donated to a local food pantry, so nothing goes to waste.
Now, I know you have been here quite a long time. You know so much about this place, and someone would be lucky if when they came for a visit, that you were their tour guide. But for those who will come and maybe it's your day off or something, what is the one thing that you think is your favorite item in the house?
Oh my. That's hard to say because everything that Louise collected was very special. But there are pieces in the library up on the second floor which were attributed to Samuel Francis DuPont, the admiral of the family. He rose to the rank of admiral while serving in the American Navy and was commissioned to take the USS Minnesota to the Far East on its maiden voyage. He visited China, Japan, and India. And while he was there, we found out what an avid shopper he was. He brought back or shipped back a lot of interesting artifacts that are in that room on display in the library. There is a hand-carved round table with a rose marble inlay carved out of ironwood, so heavy and dense it can't possibly sink in water. But the most unique piece in that room is a piece hand-carved in India from blackwood, one solid piece of wood. It's an absolutely stunning piece of work.
So we have to check out the library when we
Yes,
come.
if you have a chance, it'd be well worth the time to look at that.
Well,
Okay?
Bob, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I appreciate your time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Bill Hicks. I'm the lead interpreter here at the Lewis Maritime Museum at the Cannonball House. And as much as we like history here, we love to share it. And that's why we're sharing it on the 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about Hagley Alfresco, and we're joined now by Ashley Guillon. She is with Jamestown Catering, and she's going to show us some really delicious dishes and cocktails that we can check out when we come to the event. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit, first of all, about Jamestown Catering.
So Jamestown Catering started in 2016. And it was actually out of Tonic Seafood and Steak, which is downtown Wilmington.
Nice.
They started rolling out of there. Things started to pick up. So they were like, we need to kind of expand. We can't keep operating out of one building. It was getting to be too much. So they actually purchased the building Park Cafe. So we have a cafe, and our catering building is just across the street, which is really cool. And now 2022, we have the cafe, we have the catering side of things. So
we have a lot going on.
We have a lot going on. There's a couple different businesses that they own. We have Tonic Seafood and Steak, we have the cafe, we have the catering company, and we just recently acquired Deep Blue at Kitty Night House in Georgetown, Maryland. So we're boosting.
Super busy. So,
Yeah.
But the order of the day today is we're talking about Hagley Alfresco.
Yes.
And I know that you have some very special things that you have prepared for folks that come. Do you want to show us what you have going on here?
Sure, absolutely. So Chef Mike prepared this specific menu for Alfresco. He kind of went South American. He has a very eclectic palate. So he wanted to kind of steer away from what we typically do for a lot of our catering events and have a little fun with it. So we are preparing a sandwich de chola, which is a roasted pork sandwich. So we have a toasted ciabatta bread here, and you take some roasted pork, and then
It smells delicious. It absolutely does.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And then we have some house pickled vegetables. There's carrots, red onions, and a little jalapeno for some spice. And then we have a little salsa verde.
Now, is that green chili in there?
It is. It is green chili, and then we top it on. Nice little dairy-free option, and then it'll be served with some of our house-made chips. And then we also have a vegetarian option for those who don't eat meat, which is really cool.
And some people just like something a little lighter.
Exactly, and then hopefully it'll be a little warm, so you'll want a nice light option. So we have it's called a ceviche de palmito, so it's actually hearts of palm.
Okay.
It's kind of to come off as like a shrimp ceviche or a fish ceviche. So we take a little bit of greens, we add our hearts of palm ceviche with some of this coconut lime dressing.
Oh, that looks really good. Now, for somebody who doesn't know what a heart of palm is, what is that?
So it's like an artichoke meets jicama.
Oh, delicious.
Yes, 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 yes. So we have that. We're gonna top it on top of our little greens here. And then we also have a little quinoa salad with some toasted almonds. and that'll go right on top.
It looks like you can see the garlic in there. That's nice. So if somebody decides that they want to have both, that could be an option.
It could. It could absolutely be an option.
And what is this? This
and,
is a...
And then we have a couple plantain chips.
Nice.
So that'll be served with this as well.
And then you have brownies and cookies.
And we'll have brownies and cookies available on site for purchase.
And you have a cocktail
we do.
that you're going to share with
yes,
us.
We have
Show
two
us how this
cocktails.
works, and I will
Sure.
be the official taste tester.
Okay, so we have two cocktails. Our first cocktail is going to be a pineapple margarita. So we'll take a little bit of ice, and we're gonna add a little bit of our lime juice. The best part, the tequila. And then we have a little bit of pineapple juice. We're gonna do a little small little shake, just a
There
little
you go.
flip, and then we're gonna top with a little bubbles. And then we have a little lime.
Little squeeze of lime, nice.
There we are.
All right, let me try this. Oh, that's good. It's like I'm on a vacation.
Mhm.
I love it. And that's the whole point of, let me just scooch over here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole point of Hagley Alfresco, is to have a little bit of like a break.
Yeah.
To be with people outside and enjoy the gardens in a way
Absolutely.
that's totally different.
Absolutely.
So you have one more cocktail you're going to show us?
I do, yes. So this cocktail is also a mocktail. So we'll have it available without alcohol. So it'll be for kid-friendly because Alfresco is all about family.
And some people just don't like to drink.
And some people just don't like to drink, which is totally fine. So we have a little bit of our strawberry simple syrup. This is a strawberry lemonade. And then we have a lemonade. I'll add right in there. And I'm gonna add the vodka to this, but like I said, you can certainly have it without the vodka. Add a little more ice. Do a small little shake. And then a little extra, little bubbles, little club
Nice.
soda. And then we'll garnish with a little lemon wedge and a couple of fresh strawberries.
Fantastic. And I'm going to save this for one of the crew members to
Ooh,
try because
perfect.
he is a mocktail connoisseur. So coming up, you're going to be there for the first time on the 28th.
Yep.
There's also May 12th and May 26th. So there's plenty of opportunity to come out and everything. Ashley, thank you so
course.
much for
you.
joining us. We appreciate your time, and the food looks amazing.
Thank
We'll
you.
be right back. For more information on Hagley Alfresco or the Historic Home and Garden Tour, visit hagley.org. That'll do it for this week's episode of The 302. We're going to leave you with some beauty shots of Hagley's grounds. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on The 302.